All right, Gophers fans, we are talking about the defensive coordinator position. Who are some names I like? What am I looking for when I'm looking for the interest? And then we got to talk some hoops because the men start Big Ten play and the women have been struggling in Big Ten play, but they've been playing a massively hard schedule. How they can bounce back coming up on today's show.
Hey, you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week. And my apologies for not getting a show out yesterday. You know, I'm over here prepping for a little one, but overall, I am excited to be back at it again, talking about Gopher sports with you all. So be sure, if you want your daily Gophers content, to hit subscribe. Be a little forgiving, but we'll get those extra shows in to make up for it. No worries on that front. But today we are talking about the defensive coordinator position and what to be on the lookout for. Who are my two candidates I would absolutely love to get a shot at the position and take a swing for the fences. And then on top of that, we're going to talk about men's hoops, women's hoops with the Gophers because Big Ten play is underway. The men kick it off tonight against Michigan. And the women's basketball team have faced Iowa and Maryland in back-to-back games, both of them being losses, but it's not all lost hope. These are difficult teams, and the Gophers showed improvement from one game to the other. We're going to dive into it all, but today we kick it off with the defensive coordinator position because that opening is going to be critical for the Gophers football team. Now, what are you looking for when it comes to a defensive coordinator hire? Well, if you're being realistic with yourself, when it comes to Minnesota, looking at what options are out there that can continue to make them maybe competitive and have them on the higher upside of things, you're probably not going to be able to pull from another Power 5 program, a major program, but you could maybe pull their right-hand man. If you want to look at Iowa's second in command when it comes to the defense coordinator, even then, that might be a stretch. I know some people have thrown out Jim Leonard. I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. But if you do want to look for a swing for the fences type moment, then you're probably going to look more at the defensive coordinators on the rise in the G5 and the FCS and up and comers that would take a shot, get a price bump. Basically, they would get an improvement in the salary and they could go improve it on a bigger level to elevate their careers. That is probably the Gophers' best bet when it comes to trying to find a high upside play at the defensive coordinator that can make them and elevate them by showing, look, what I did at the FCS or what I did at the G5 level, it carries over and it doesn't matter who is there. We're going to make it happen with the talent surrounding. And if the Gophers can find that, that is where the Gophers can get back into competing, get back into bigger moments, maybe even getting into some of these bigger games, maybe pulling up an upset or two. But regardless, this defensive coordinator position is going to be critical when it comes to the hiring process. Now, the overall things you want to look at outside of that is probably fixing your third down defense. Now, the Gophers were excellent at third down defense under Joe Rossi when it came to the 2020 for this somewhat, but 2021 and 2022 seasons, they were amazing at third down defense, getting off the field, had some of the best third down percentages in the country. Then you look at this past season and you're like, what went wrong? Yes, there were injuries. Yes, there were things going on with personnel, but overall, the thing that the Gophers could not do is they could not get off the field on third down, and it caused them to lose many games that they probably either should have won or should have been in. I'm looking at the Illinois game. I'm looking at the not Michigan State. I'm looking at the Illinois and the Northwestern is the other game I'm looking at. In the final 2 minutes of the game, if you can get off the field on third downs, if you can get off the field on third downs earlier in the game, they can't generate those comebacks. Third down defense was the Gophers' downfall this season. So they're going to have to pick it up in that right. Now, when you're looking at third down defenses across the league last year, and not just the league, across the country, the G5 FC, or I guess we're just going to stick to G5 on this one. The G5 schools that were in the top 25 in third down defense last year, you're looking at SMU, you're looking at Miami of Ohio, you're looking at Ohio, you're looking at Marshall and Troy. Now, all of those teams were top 25 in the rankings in the country when it came to third down defense. So are these schools doing it multiple years? Now, maybe not. There's a few of them that have been, but overall, what you're looking for is the growth, because a lot of these schools, they had their coordinator for maybe a year or two, and then they head into year 2 or year 3 with that coordinator, and all of a sudden you're seeing major jumps in the production, having had players in their system for a couple of years. That is what you like to see, that growth, that development within it, and on top of it, the production that they do at a high level. Now, on top of that, you're going to need to look for an aggressive play caller, someone who isn't afraid to take a shot or take a chance on a blitz or take a chance on setting up for certain things. Aggressive play calling is going to be pertinent in this Big Ten new landscape, because you're Washington in the national championship, you're Michigans in the national championship, your Ohio States, your Oregons, your USCs, they may be on the verge, Penn State. And then you still got to deal with your rivals, Iowa and Wisconsin. You still got to deal with UCLA, who's coming over, and they're not going to be anybody to slough off. Nebraska is on the rise potentially. They were just inches away from a bowl game, and now they're bringing in the number 1 quarterback in the country. The Big Ten is growing. It's getting better. You cannot find yourself in the bottom tier, or you could be stuck there. So Minnesota has to hit on this defensive coordinator position, and aggressive play calling is going to be important. Now, outside of that, what have they done against P5 opponents? That's something to take into consideration. Now, you still have the difference in talent levels between the P5 and the G5 for the most part, but are they limiting scoring from what those teams' averages are? Are they slowing down the opposition? Are they creating turnovers? Because when you have more talent at that P5 level, if you come over to a Minnesota or a different Big Ten school and you have talent that is still able to hang with some of those guys, that's when all of a sudden you can see those numbers start to tick up. So it is important, not necessarily the result of those games, but how they fared. Did they cause turnovers? Did they get sacks? Did they generate pressure? That is going to be the huge thing in that department. And then finally, you would love to see a linebacker coach, seeing as that is the missing position coach that this group needs. And then what have they done across the 4 main statistical categories? And those 4 main statistical categories are pass defense, rush defense, total defense, and scoring defense. Now, if you want to look at defensive coordinators that were top 25 in 3 of those 4 categories last season that were from non-Power 5 schools, you're looking at Ohio, who is in all 4 of those, was in the top 25 of all 4 of those categories. You're looking at Air Force, which is in all 4, again, in the top 25 of those categories. And then you're looking at SMU and Troy. Both of those teams were top 25 in 3 of the 4 categories, and they were very close on being in all 4. You're talking about SMU was 28th in rush defense, just outside of that top 25. Then you're looking at Troy, who was 30th in pass defense, again, just outside of that top 25. So those 4 schools, that's a pretty impressive year. And then so what you'd want to do is look at how those coordinators have done statistically, or years prior to that. But on top of that, how their system is similar to what the Gophers have maybe been running, which I'm trying to dive more into, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more for you prior to any defensive coordinator positions being made. But all in all, this is just hopeful. This is just wishful thinking. This is what hopefully the Gophers will be aggressive with in taking a shot on a young and up-and-comer. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That doesn't mean it's for certain. Now, outside of that, if you look at other schools that were top 25 in 2 out of those 4 categories, you start to get into your NIUs, your Bowling Greens, your Ball State, your Miami of Ohio. Those are the schools that are right on the verge there too. Now, yes, they're all playing lower competition, but they also have people, they have less talent on board to make it happen. So that's where you start to look at the P5 matchups and how they fared. Overall, when I'm looking across the landscape, when I'm looking at what defensive coordinators have done, 2 names that seem to pique my interest more and more. The first one is Spence Nowitzki. I've brought him up on this show before. He had the number 4 defense in the country last year, number 1 defense in G5. He was top 5 in every defensive category. He saw a huge jump in turnovers in 2022, which was year 1 in his defensive coordinator. They went from 8 turnovers the year prior to him being defensive coordinator to 22 turnovers in his first year as the defensive coordinator. And he didn't just do well at Ohio. He also was the defensive coordinator at Miami, Ohio, and they had multiple successes. They were the number 1 MAC defense in scoring and rush defense in 2021, I believe. And he coached linebacker Ivan Pace, which a lot of Vikings fans know the name and love the name. On top of that, he has ties to Mankato State. He was a player there and he coached there. He's been here. He's familiar with here. That would be a fun storyline in itself. And I just imagine Nowitzki and Debo chopping it up and terrorizing opponents with that pressure and with the defense here, with that front 7 of sorts. And then you think about, he has led a top MAC defense with not 1 but 2 different programs in the last 4 years. All of that is impressive. The second name that I like, Scott Simons, he had success as Liberty's defensive coordinator during the time when Malik Willis and all of them were out there. Now, Malik Willis is the name that got a lot of love during the draft, but that defense was nasty in those years, and he was the defensive coordinator there. Now he's the defensive coordinator at SMU since 2022, so he's had 2 seasons there once again. In his 2 years there, he has been balling defensively. 964 tackles in year 1, 28.5 sacks in year 1, 76 tackles for loss in year 1 with 22 turnovers. That was all in his first year as SMU's defensive coordinator. Now, on top of that, you look at 23 and you're talking about the 12th in total defense in the nation, 11th in scoring defense, 13th in pass defense in the entire country. The defense led them to the AAC title game, and they held number 22 Tulane to only 14 points and pulled out a victory. Now, the negatives with Simons is that he has lost almost all of his P5 opponent school games in the last 2 years. He's 1-8 in those games if you count Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, who hadn't yet quite made the jump in 2022. But if you don't, he's 0-5. And of those games, he did hold number 18 Oklahoma this past season to 28 points, but they still struggled a bit. Now, the negative with Nowitzki, in my opinion, is that he has only played 4 offenses in the top 80 and 1 in the top 50, and he got stomped by Penn State in year 1, which was game 2 of the season. Now, again, it's nitpicking, but those are the 2 guys that pop out the most to me. Let me know if there's others you would like to hear more about down in the comments, and we'll get that going. But I want to turn it over to men's hoops, where we're talking about the Big Ten season, which is officially underway tonight. Let's jump in and talk about what they need to do to get back to a tournament. First, I got to talk to you about our friends over at Gametime, because Gametime is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. And that is for a reason, folks, because they have you covered. They have the best deals on last minute tickets, and that is the lowest price guaranteed. Now, they not only do same day events, same day deals for their tickets, but they even go through the first hour of the game. So you can really try to get the best deal when it comes to last minute tickets. But my favorite 2 features is the all-in prices category, where you don't have to worry about hidden fees. You get your total upfront, so you know what you're getting, and you're getting a great deal without any hidden fees. And then you can also take a look at the seat view from your phone and see what it looks like and have the right expectations for your seats. You should definitely check them out over at Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that's locked on. Then you will get $20 off your purchase. So again, use promo code LOCKEDON when you download the Gametime app. Gametime, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Gophers fans, we are talking men's hoops. They're starting the Big Ten season, and the first things first, they are fully healthy and fully back. They've got the whole lineup. Braden Carrington is back. Dawson Garcia is back, and they're ready to make it happen in a Big Ten season. Now, Carrington is going to be a welcomed addition back to the team because Carrington's defense is some of the best possibly in the conference, but definitely the best on the team. He was able to slow down Tominaga from Nebraska, who everybody knows has a quick shot, is super fast, and he can get his looks in a hurry. He held him scoreless when it came to field goals. His only points in the game came from free throws, and I still think some of those free throw attempts were bailouts, in my opinion. Carrington's defense plus his rebounding is going to be vastly welcomed for this Gophers team. Now, on top of that, you've got Dawson Garcia, and he's back. And the best part about Dawson Garcia being back is he can warm back up into that full-time big man role, the main player of the team, the focus of the offense and whatnot. It doesn't have to be here. The whole team is on your back again. Lead us to the promised land. What has happened since his injury is that others have been able to step up, get comfortable, get hot, and start to create that new chemistry between each other that is only going to be better as they get Dawson Garcia warmed up with this squad in that front as well. So overall, I think that the pressure on Dawson Garcia is definitely lighter with these guys stepping up. Elijah Hawkins, Mike Mitchell Jr., Parker Fox coming out with some energy scoring, Isaiah Enan having moments where he's coming in as a spark plug. This team is starting to gel. The younger players are coming along. They might not be all-stars from the get-go. They're still getting their feel for the game, but overall, the team seems to be in a healthy spot. Now, the team answered the call in Dawson Garcia's wake. Now, the schedule is now no nights off. Every game matters. The Big Ten schedule is going to be hard, and every team in this league is going to be a tough out. So can this team hang around? Can they cause problems? That is going to be key. Can they prove that the non-conference schedule was just a warm-up for what is to come? Now, with that, they're likely going to need 9 or 10 wins in these final 18 wins of Big Ten play in order to get to a tournament run, because your non-conference schedule is not helping you out when it comes to a resume building thing. And the games that were maybe helping you out for resume builders, you didn't end up winning. So you have to get through and you have to win big conference games. And it can't just be maybe 500 in the Big Ten. You have to get a couple of extras, get yourself in that 19-20 win category. 19 wins last year saw Rutgers make the tournament as a play-in. I believe they're one of the last teams to get in. So if you want to have a shot at being in the conversation, you're going to have to walk away with about 19 or 20 wins. Now, that means the Gophers have to win 9 or 10 of these next 18 games. So when you're looking at the schedule, what teams could Minnesota potentially give a run? Well, you've got Michigan tonight, and I think they can be in that one for sure. Then you're looking at Maryland is the next game. Again, another team that has kind of struggled in their non-conference play. You take those two, you stack on wins, you get people to believe, but not only that, it can start to warm you up for a next matchup in Indiana, which is going to be super tough. And it's going to be a team that people are not going to count you in. So we've seen this Gopher team step up against Indiana last year. I'm thinking to when they had like 5 or 6 players total, and they were able to give them a run down to the final wire, but they couldn't pull it out. And that was with multiple starters missing. Now you're talking about playing this team that if you can come off and get a Michigan win, get a Maryland win, and then you take on an Indiana, maybe you can pull an upset in that scenario. But besides that, if you don't take Indiana, then you're looking at 2 games versus Iowa this year, 2 games versus Penn State this year. Ohio State, you've got another game, and we saw the Gophers come back in that one. So if they can get started and not fall behind, maybe they can win at home. Nebraska is a team they've already shown they can beat. Can they do it again? And then you've got Rutgers, 1 game against them, and then Michigan State. Can you split with them? Northwestern, can you split with them? That's where it's going to start to get tough. If you say Michigan, Maryland, Iowa twice, Penn State twice. That's 6 games right there. Then you just got to kind of hope to split series. So hope to split with Northwestern, hope to split with Michigan State, hope to split with Indiana. And then you've got Rutgers, who has been struggling, Ohio State. If you can get that split, all of a sudden you're right on the cusp of that 9 to 10 wins. And that's not talking about Purdue. That's not talking about Illinois. That's not talking about Wisconsin. Luckily, you only have to play those teams once in this Big Ten schedule. You lucked out because those 3 teams are the 3 Big Ten teams that are currently ranked. So overall, the Gophers do have a shot to pull it off, but they're going to have to prove that they are for real, and they're going to have to do it right away in this Big Ten season, because this Michigan game and this Maryland game are pertinent to getting on a roll and getting confidence. Now, with that, the X factor player, in my opinion, and it's players, there's 2 of them, the ones that matter the most for how successful this team can be in the long run, in my personal opinion, it's the transfer guards. The consistency and the continued success of Elijah Hawkins and Mike Mitchell Jr. will lead this team to whatever direction they finish in the season, because Joshua Joseph, Carrington, Christie, Payne, all of those players are still going to continue to develop, and they're going to continue to learn. And there's going to be moments where they get hot, and there's going to be moments where they have mistakes. They're younger players, and they're still growing into it all. But on top of that, Fox and Enan they're going to have moments off of the bench where they're a spark plug, and they're going to have different matchups where they get to go off, and different matchups where maybe they don't get very many minutes. And Dawson Garcia, once he's fully healthy, is going to be Dawson Garcia, plain and simple. He's going to be a beast, and I'm not worried about him. So then it all comes down to the 2 players who have helped kind of lead the way in Dawson's injury, and that is Elijah Hawkins, who is the leader of this team, the point guard, the facilitator, and he has been really guiding and dishing all over for this team. And then Mike Mitchell Jr. has been a major scoring presence for this team. If they can continue in those facets, this Minnesota team can have the upside to potentially get to that 19 or 20 wins. That would be massive in a year 3 for Coach Ben Johnson. The ultimate upside of this team in the Big Ten games, 1, will likely come down to how consistent Elijah Hawkins and Mike Mitchell Jr. are in league play. If the production from the last few games carries over into the Big Ten season, then Minnesota should be able to upset some schools. If not, it could be tough sledding for this team. We're going to find out sooner rather than later. Now, I want to wrap this up with some women's basketball talk, because their Big Ten play is underway, and it's tough, but they did show some signs of improvement from game to game. We're going to talk about that coming up next. First, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel, because they have an awesome deal for you. You get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with any $5 bet. That's right. If you place a $5 bet, win or lose, you're getting $150 in bonus bets. You can't lose with that deal. Literally, you can't lose. You're getting $150 just for placing a $5 bet. $150 in bonus bets, and they have awesome options for you, from live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. There's all sorts of different ways you can navigate. It's super easy, safe, and secure to use. So download the FanDuel app, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can take your best bet at getting $150 in bonus bets, win or lose with a $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Gophers fans, I want to talk about the women's hoops team real quick. We saw them play Iowa, and it was tough sledding. It was rough go. It's the number 4 team in the country for a reason, but playing your second game on the road at Carver Hawkeye is going to be hard, and they hung around for a little bit, but what I think the biggest thing that hurt this team was just the pace of play and getting caught on their heels, because Iowa did not slow down. And as Iowa pressed on, and as they kept the pace, and as they kept the transition, Minnesota started to tire out. But the biggest thing is that when I was out there and Caitlin Clark is hitting 8 3-pointers, it's already going to be tough. Then you add in the pace, you add in the hostile environment and all of that, and it starts to add up quickly. But the biggest thing that hurt Minnesota, aside from the pace, aside from the 3-pointers, the biggest thing that hurt was the second chance points. You can't allow any team, especially the number 4 team in the country, to get second looks, third looks at baskets. You have to capitalize. You have to get the board off the glass, and you have to be able to push on offense. The difference in second chance points from Iowa to Minnesota was what really really hurt this team in the long run. Now, they tried to bounce back versus Maryland at home. Maryland is the 34th ranked team in the net rankings, and they gave it a good matchup, but they were unable to walk away with the W. But it was a lot closer. It was a lot better of an effort. And I think that you started to see the improvement. Now, both of these teams were top 35 teams in the country when it comes to net rankings. Iowa, number 9, Maryland, number 34. But the challenge is not done. Minnesota is still going to be tested. And if Minnesota can walk away with 3 wins in the next 4 or 5 games, it will be very important for them. If you can be 3-3, 3-4 in this next couple games, that will be big on pushing yourself and your resume for the tournament. Now, next up, you've got 36th in the net ranking in Michigan. Then you've got 26th in the net ranking in Nebraska. And then you've got number 19 in the net rankings in IU. And then you've got 14th in the net rankings in Michigan State. It literally gets harder and harder game after game after game. And Michigan State just took Iowa down to the wire and lost by a buzzer beater from Caitlin Clark. So, I mean, this is not going to get easier, but it will present the opportunity for the Gophers to see the challenge, respond, and hopefully show the improvements in this Big Ten play. If they can show improvements from what they did from Iowa, like they saw Iowa to Maryland, if you saw the improvements there, if you can continue to make those type of improvements game to game to game, I think you can truly walk away with 2 or 3 upsets in that next few bunch of games for Minnesota. And on top of that, it will only propel you for the rest of the Big Ten season. That should get a little easier after that. So Minnesota's in a good spot. Hopefully they can walk away with some wins, but the biggest thing is improving from game to game, which is what we hope to see. That being said, the final thing I'll mention about the Gophers women's team, they brought in early enrollee McKenna Johnson. That's great for her, and it's great for the program because not only was she rated as, I believe, a top 60 recruit, but overall she's getting in early, getting to be able to work out with the team, travel with the team, build the practice with the team, build the chemistry with the other players, with what is basically the youngest team in the conference. And being able to get her in now only helps speed up her process into being an effective player in her freshman year. She could maybe play important minutes for this team, having been in the system, having gotten into it all. Sophie Hart was a player who came over early and started to build that chemistry, started to build that bond, and you're seeing it come to the floor and come to fruition right now. So if we can continue that development, it's going to only benefit Minnesota in the long run. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Coach Plitz-White, but now we got to keep growing it and get some Big Ten wins. I think there's going to be a couple coming in the next week or two, and they've got some time till their next one. They've got 5 days until they take on Michigan, so hopefully that'll be the first one where we can start to see the switch flip and Minnesota get back on track when it comes to Big Ten wins. That's going to do it for us on today's show of Locked On Golden Gophers. I hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about, is the QB room in a good spot, and what are some positions that Minnesota could use some additions on for the football team. That'll be tomorrow. I'll see you then. Roll the boat, Sky Go Gophers, and as always, don't forget to subscribe.